It appears no U.S. or foreign troops were killed or injured in this attack. This comes in response to a U.S. drone strike that killed Iran's top military general. Countries throughout the Middle East are now on high alert for any potential escalation. We've also just learned that the U.S. forces at those bases were given a prior warning by the Iraqi government after Iraq was tipped off about this missile strike from Iran.
Also breaking overnight, a passenger plane crashed minutes after takeoff from Tehran. The Boeing 737 was flying from Tehran to Kiev when it went down, killing all 176 people on board. Now, why is this of such great interest? Obviously, this plane went down just hours after the Iranians fired those missiles into Iraq. Ukraine's prime minister says at this point it's too early to know what caused the crash. Several international airlines are now avoiding Iranian airspace as a result of this, and obviously, so many questions about the timing of this incident. We have yet to get any real answers this morning. We are digging. In the meantime, CNN covering every angle of all these breaking stories. We begin with CNN senior international correspondent Arwa Damon live in Baghdad for the latest. It is daybreak in Iraq right now. They've had a chance to assess the damage at these two air bases. What are you learning, Arwa?
Well, at this stage, they are saying that there are also no casualties on the Iraqi side. What we heard from the prime minister's office, and this is really the first sort of senior government response to this that we're getting, is that they received official verbal warning shortly past midnight and then communicated that to their commanders on the ground, keeping in mind that these bases are joint bases. There are joint command centers that are shared among the Iraqi, U.S. and other coalition forces. The attack happening just over an hour and a half after that initial message was delivered. The message not specifying where the attack would be taking place, but saying that it would be specifically against U.S. military targets. The Ministry of Defense is saying that 22 strikes took place, 17 of those against the Al Asad Air Base, 5 of those against the Erbil location where you have the U.S. military and other forces as well. What we are now hearing, however, from one of the more prominent Shia paramilitary groups here, one of the groups that is quite notorious for its ability to carry out attacks against U.S. Forces, is that was Iran's response. What we saw happening overnight, that is how Tehran was responding to this. They are saying that there is going to be an Iraqi response as well, and that it will be in kind to the Iranian one. After this attack, there were Apache helicopters overhead. There were drones that the U.S. launched as well in all of its locations. This is still a region that is on high alert, that is still very much a country that is on high alert, because let's not forget, you still have this demand coming from Iraqi Shia parliamentarians following that vote that took place to expel foreign forces. This demand that is also coming from Iran, from its proxies on the ground, that American and foreign forces are no longer welcome here, Allison.
Arwa, that is such an important reminder that this is not over, that there are all sorts of interests and people are calculating what to do next. Arwa, thank you very much for your reporting from the region. Iran's supreme leader, in a televised address to that nation this morning, says they gave the U.S. a, quote, slap in the face, calling the missile attacks a crushing response to the killing of their top military general. CNN's Fred Plotkin is live in Tehran with more. What have you learned, Fred?
Hi, Allison. Yeah, we're also collecting a lot of information, also collecting new video elements as well. We do have that video of the missiles being fired allegedly by the Iranians in the very early morning hours of today. And that's something that's really significant because the Iranians are making a major issue out of the fact that they used ballistic missiles to hit those targets in Iraq. Essentially, what the Iranians are saying is that, first of all, it was the Revolutionary Guard Corps and its missile troops that did this. That's the same force that Qasem Soleimani, that general that was killed by the U.S., was a part of. The Iranians also clearly messaging, first of all, they can't just use proxy forces to hit the U.S. In the Middle East, but they can also use their own conventional forces. They've long been making an issue out of the fact that they spent a lot of effort, money in making their ballistic missile program more sophisticated and launching these attacks from Iranian territory. Also, guys, we're getting new information from you as well. Just got some information from Hassan Rouhani, the president of this country. He tweeted and said that the answer to Qasem Soleimani's death will be expelling the United States from the region. The Supreme Leader, by the way, who said that the Iranians gave the U.S. a slap in the face, saying something very similar, saying that Iran cannot accept America's presence here in the Middle East either. Now, the Iranian foreign minister, he's also coming out, and essentially what he's saying right now, and I think this is very important, is that the Iranians have done their retaliation, and all of this, at least this escalation, can end right here. He's saying the U.S. needs to come to its senses, and essentially saying that the ball now is in President Trump's court. Let's listen into what he had to say.
We did not start this process of escalation. The United States waged an economic war against Iran. The United States has to come to its senses. Europe can play a useful role by informing the United States of the serious error in their analysis, that they should stop listening to clowns, that they should base their policy based on realities and not some illusions of some clowns who have ambitions elsewhere.
So there you have Jawad Zarif, Allison, the foreign minister of Iran, with some pretty strong words for the Trump administration, for President Trump, and possibly also Secretary of State Mike Pompeo as well. There's been sort of a war of words between Zarif and Mike Pompeo. The Iranians, however, are saying that if the U.S. does retaliate, that there is then going to be a massive retaliation from their side as well. As we just said, they said the ball right now in the Trump administration's court. We also heard this morning from Iranian military heads saying that if the U.S. retaliates, that there would be, as they put it, an even more crushing blow coming from their side. So still a very dangerous situation that we're witnessing right now in the Middle East, Allison.
And Fred, at the same time that all of that's happening, what about this deadly passenger plane crash in Tehran? I know you know that airport well.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know that airport very well. In fact, that's the airport that we always fly in and out of when we go to Iran and come from Iran. That was really one of the things that early this morning it seemed almost out of this world as we were reporting on these big hostilities going on between the U.S. and Iran. And then all of a sudden, we got the message that there had been a major aviation incident, a major aviation disaster just a couple of miles down the road. Now, we know that this is a Ukrainian airliner from Ukrainian International Airlines. The plane itself, a Boeing 737-800 next generation jet, is only about 3.5 years old. We know that the plane took off from Imam Khomeini Airport in the early morning hours of today. It only flew for about 2 minutes and then crashed into an area of fields. The area down there is not like what you see behind me, those mountains. It really gets into flatland when you move into that area. There's a lot of farmland, a lot of small farmhouses, and so therefore the crash site already quite accessible. At this point in time, not clear how this plane came down. The Ukrainians tweeted earlier that they think it wasn't a terror attack. However, they now say it's absolutely unclear what caused all of this, John.
We know many people were dead, including many Iranians, many Canadians as well. Frederick Pleiken for us in Tehran this morning with terrific reporting. Fred, please keep us posted. Meanwhile, we're waiting to hear from President Trump this morning. He will address the nation, this following the Iranian missile attack on those bases housing U.S. troops. Overnight, what he wrote is, "All is well." CNN's Barbara Starr, live at the Pentagon. Barbara, you've been tracking this for hours. And again, we should tell people that as of now, no known casualties on the U.S. or Iraqi side. One would think that would factor into how the president addresses this.
It may well do that because there were no casualties that we know of at this point, and that may give President Trump a little bit of room for not immediately engaging in an escalation, but we don't know that yet as we await what he has to say about it. If this was Iran's slap-in-the-face strategy, there is some thinking out there that they deliberately targeted portions of these bases where they knew there would not precisely be U.S. forces, but not clear that really about that because these missiles are not highly accurate, and nonetheless they targeted U.S. locations. The president's tweet late last night was pretty interesting. Let me read part of it to everyone. He says, "All is well. Missiles launched from Iran at 2 military bases located in Iraq. Assessment of casualties and damages taking place now. So far, so good. We have the most powerful and well-equipped military anywhere in the world by far. I will be making a statement tomorrow morning, of course, meaning this morning. Warning Iran, the U.S. has a very well-equipped military, but if the president is looking for further escalation, that may put this on a road that may be very difficult to get out of. The Pentagon so far waiting to see what the president decides to do. John, Allison?
Barbara, thank you very much for all of your reporting.